My Audacity just quit.
Oh
Oh,
no.
my lag on Zoom has been so bad, so hopefully that doesn't end up in the recording. Hopefully we can get enough out of this to actually put it back together.
Well, if not, we can say there was a time trap.
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name's Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Russ Barnett, a paleogeneticist specializing in ancient DNA of Pleistocene megafauna.
And today we're reviewing a movie called Time Trap from 2017. This is a movie that I had stumbled upon on Netflix years ago, and I thought it was crazy, so this has been on my list for a while. Were you guys familiar with this movie?
No.
Nope. Never heard of it.
Well, just as a preview, this movie has, by my count at the end of my notes, cavemen, archaeology students and their professor, hippies, cowboys, spacemen, Spanish conquistadors, children for some reason tagging along, and all of them caught up in some kind of a time warp. I think that covers pretty much everything in this movie.
Yeah, that's it. There's also, it looks like some...
And aliens.
Yeah, maybe. Or there's the conquistadors are fighting with some native groups as well.
Okay, I forgot about that one, yeah. And then aliens, we'll get to that. That's some pretty big spoilers in this episode, I think, if you wanted to actually watch this movie. I don't know where we fall on it. I think it's very interesting. Watching it a second time, I was still very entertained. I don't know if it's good, but it was very interesting.
It wasn't bad. Like it was a good turn your brain off and watch it, but I don't think I feel like we need to watch it again.
Yeah. I think it was not good.
Yeah.
It was one of those ones where definitely there's been some passion put into it. It's clearly a project that meant a lot to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Had some interesting ideas in it. It was, at least competently done.
Yeah, the acting wasn't bad either.
Yeah, it's definitely not the worst we've seen for this.
I think the inaccuracy that bugged me the most was that one of the girls with the long blonde hair would have gone halfway through the movie without putting it in a ponytail. Like, that just wouldn't have happened. You don't go caving with your hair just blow dried down to your,
Good point.
your lower
Yes,
back.
my girlfriend pointed that out to me too when we were watching.
That never occurred to me, but that is a very good point. Who's going to do the synopsis?
Oh, man.
I think, Kim, you obviously had good attention to detail with this. I think you should do the synopsis.
Well, I think that's probably the only detail I paid attention to, but okay, so it opens up and there is a guy that finds this hippie van, like a VW van, decked out all hippie style, peace and love and the painting on the outside. So he finds the van and then he follows the van or a rope or something into a cave, right? So he's obviously looking for whoever was in the van. He decides that those people, whoever he was looking for in the van, has gone into a cave. Then we don't really... Oh no, he's walking up through the cave and then he comes across this invisible barrier that he can walk through, but it feels like the air feels different. It almost looks like there's gas in the cave because the air is kind of whooshy. And he's like, oh, it feels damp if you put your hand in. But if I was walking in a cave, I'd definitely think it was gas and I'd get out of there. Anyways, but he goes through and then we don't see him again. And then it goes later to his TAs, so his archaeology TAs, because we find out that he's an archaeology professor. And he was going to look for hippies that disappeared in the desert in the 1970s. And they don't really explain if this is related to his archaeology career or if this is a personal thing. Like they do a little bit later, but the TAs seem to know about it, that he's gone to do this. They wanted to go with him, but he wouldn't let them. And then when he goes missing, they decide that they have to go and look for him. And like very responsible graduate students, they decide to bring a random girl that has a crush on the guy so that they could use her truck. And then she brings her kid sister, and then her kid sister then also brings her kid sister's friend. So they go on this thing with their two TAs, the girl that has a crush on them that they're using for the ride, and then two children into this cave. They get there and they full on go caving. Like, and it's not just walking into a cave. They have to use a rope and like rock climb down, and they're still with the kids. Like one of the kids decided not to go because he didn't like bugs, but the other kid went down, and you're like, this is ridiculous. This is just, they would be in so much trouble. Why would you bring children? Anyway, so they get down to the bottom, and they go through one of those barriers also. And then I forget kind of what happens, but they get stuck in a cave, and then they find another exit to the cave, another hole with rope. And then they find at the bottom of the hole what I thought was the dead body of one of the children, but maybe it was just his backpack and camera. Because I thought it was a dead body.
No, they found this dead child. They full on killed a child in like the first act of this movie. Right. Yeah.
So the child that
is crazy.
That had stayed above, they end up finding his, and so to them, they've been in the cave for like maybe an hour, and they find his body at the bottom of this hole. So like he's fallen down, and they watch the video, but the video shows him being up in the desert alone, and like they've been missing on the video for like a week. So he was by himself for a week. Then he finally decided to go down this cave in this separate hole that he found, and then he fell and died. And they see on the video too that he wasn't quite dead, but then something came and smashed his head and then killed him.
They see this a little bit later, though, so...
A little bit later, yeah.
Yeah, but so for a while we thought that he fell to his death, and then later we have to watch this child die a second time where someone smashes his head in. They kill this child twice.
But at no point in time do they seem that concerned with what killed him, right? They're never like, there's something else in this cave. They're kind of like, oh, gross. Oh, no, that's terrible. Okay. I don't know. I just didn't think they reacted appropriate to the entire situation.
Yeah, the tone is off in this movie. Yeah.
They were pretty kind of distraught at first when they find him, and they're like trying to keep the sister who was actually friends with this kid away from the body, but they put their GoPro on a stick just so they can kind of rubberneck the dead body action.
And then there's a point when they're watching the video and the little boy, like 11-year-old kid, makes a joke, and one of the girls smiles like in the way that you would, years later looking back and you remember how funny he was, so it makes you smile. Not in the moment when you're standing over his dead body still. Like that, it doesn't matter how cute what he was, you wouldn't smile.
No.
Anyways, okay, I'm getting way off track. This is why Rosh is better at them. So they decide that the most experienced caver is going to climb up to the hole to try and get help. So she climbs up the hole, and when they've noticed at this point that the light is weird with the hole, so it keeps going from like light to dark, light to dark, light to dark, as if there's something moving on top of it. So she climbs up the hole, but then when she gets up there, there's nothing up there. There's no trees or anything. It looks like kind of like an Armageddon type landscape that you would expect with those like doomsday movies. And there's nothing around, and her cell phone won't work, and the GPS won't work. And then there's a big sandstorm coming, and then just as before the sandstorm's about to hit and she's about to jump back into the cave, she sees these like flying saucer. They're not flying saucers, but they're like flying alien, like flying triangles technology that does not exist, right? So it's obviously not the time that they left or the world that they left. So she climbs back down, and then her friends are like, why didn't you climb up? And she's like, I did climb up. And they're like, no, you've been gone for seconds, not minutes or an hour. So you couldn't have climbed up. You're just lying. And then luckily her camera had actually recorded everything so she could show them what she saw. But then I was wondering, like, wouldn't the camera battery be affected by that time transition? Anyways, so then they're trying to figure out what's happening. And then one of the guys realizes that the movement of light that they're seeing is actually time passing. So they think it's days, so night and day, night and day, night and day, and what they're seeing is the stars moving, or the sun and sky moving. And then once she shows them the video and they kind of realize it, what they realize is actually years. So every time the light flickers, it's a year gone by. And so they've actually, even though they've only been down there for a few hours, it's actually thousands of years have gone by up above. And then they start to freak out because they don't really know what to do. And so they found their professor's bag. And so they decide that they're going to go farther into the cave to try and find the professor because maybe he knows what to do. And then at this point, they get attacked by cavemen. And then one of them, the guy dies, and they're separated. So it's the girl that has a crush on him and the guy, and he dies. And then the spaceman comes down, and the spaceman just knows how to put the cavemen to sleep. Then the spaceman goes up to this pond of water and collects some of the water and is about to leave, but then he notices that she's so upset that this guy died. So then the spaceman drags the dead body of the guy into the pond, and he comes back to life. So that's obviously the Fountain of Youth is what they've been looking for. I forgot to mention that. All of this is because they're looking for the Fountain of Youth. and
Well, they were looking for hippies at
yes,
first.
and the hippies.
The professor was looking for hippies, and they were looking for the professor.
Yes. And then we find out that the reason why the professor's looking for the hippies is because the hippies were his parents, and they were looking for the Fountain of Youth because his sister was sick, and they wanted to keep their sister healthy. So the parents went down with his sister and never came back. So that's why the professor was there looking for them. The spaceman obviously understands this is Fountain of Youth, and he pulls him in. The guy survives, comes back to life, and then more cavemen come, and the spaceman has to fight the caveman. But then the spaceman gets hurt and injured, and then the spaceman dies, and they're asking him before he dies, but he doesn't speak the same language as them. What's going on? What year are you from? Because he's human. He takes the mask off, and then he plays news clips in like a Star Wars-y R2-D2 way, like where the screen comes up, and the news clips about them going missing and their family looking for them, and then climate wars and the world just collapsing, and then humans leaving Earth in those triangle spaceships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the world is dead. And then they decide not to drag the spaceman over to the Fountain of Youth to save him, even though we had just seen that works. And then they realize what's happening, and they find the archaeology professor, and oh no, they don't find him yet. They go back again to the opening of the cave, but now instead of there just being sky above the cave, they see water. And so they're kind of freaking out because they don't know what to do about the water. And then so one of the girls climbs up and kind of puts her hand in the water to see what's up, and then she gets pulled through, like a creepy hand reaches down and pulls her up through the water. And so everybody's freaking out, and then she comes back down and she says, "Trust me, you have to come up here." And then they don't want to, but then she's like, trust me. And then they all come through the water, and then they come up through these pools that's in like a spaceship. And then it turns out that humans are living on this spaceship, and they understand, for some reason, the humans understand that they were the ones that were trapped there thousands and thousands of years ago. And so they've saved them and brought them up. And so in the pond now is the kid that died. He comes back to life. All of the other ones come back to life. The professor is there. His parents and his sister are there. So they've saved all of them. They haven't saved any of the cavemen or any of the Spanish conquistadors or the cowboy or anybody else. They just saved these people. And then they're also happy, and they mentioned something like, well, it's not the life that we wanted, but it sure isn't bad. And they are all happy that they're all together, even though it's a work colleague, a guy you had a crush on when you were like 18, and like your sister's friend. And then everybody else you know and love is gone and dead, and you're living on a spaceship. I just don't think it would be quite that happy of an ending. Anyways, that was terrible. You would have done a way better job.
No. That was all the good, all the main points.
But I have no idea why they didn't bring over the spaceman into the Fountain of Youth.
He was sitting right beside it.
Just watched that. He was sitting right beside it. That's probably what he was trying to say to them. You dumb bitch. You just watched me do this. Oh, and so what they said that the professor determined what it was is that in every entrance to this cavern is a different barrier, and each barrier has a different effect on time. So sometimes you go in and it's really slow, sometimes you go in and it's really fast, and that's all set up to protect the Fountain of Youth. So they should have, I think, probably just gone back up the hole that they came from. That would have been one of the first things I did after I noticed that the other hole was weird.
But then they didn't have the rope, so what? I mean, there are some quite nice little touches in the film. So like the reason they get stuck in the cave is because the rope like gets cut, or they think it gets cut, but actually it's because there's the kind of difference between the rope outside the time barrier and inside the time barrier. It causes it to be like have a kind of stress differential, which means that it just sort of frays and falls apart, and that's why they can't climb out again. That was quite cool, and that's why. Yeah,
I agree.
The two main characters, the two TAs, one of them's broken his hand, so he can't climb, and the other one's busted her ankle, and she can't climb, and so that's why they're stuck.
What I noticed with this movie is there's a lot of times that when I had a question, like I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. Then within the next scene, I'm like, oh, okay, they explained it.
which, you know, a lot of low-budget films
they never explain
don't.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whoever thought it out really well.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the end, it all kind of makes sense. But it's when you're watching it, you're like, where is this going to go? This is so crazy. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The tone is wrong. Like they're all way too happy-go-lucky about the horrible things that are happening around them. And I don't know why the cavemen were...
Especially at the end.
Yeah, I know. Like, oh, this is so exciting. And the cavemen were just seen as like, they're the typical cavemen, like that cartoonish fur loincloth, hunched over, long, scraggly hair. And they were just brutes, right? They just like killed everybody and everything.
And that doesn't make sense because, you know, it's set in the Americas, clearly. I don't know if it's supposed to be California or Arizona or somewhere like that.
I think it's Texas.
Texas, yeah. But, you know, the first people to come into the Americas, the first people that could have discovered this Fountain of Youth cave would have been fully modern people, no different from anyone around today. Yeah. So, in terms of archaeology, which I guess is what we're supposed to be critiquing, it's a big kind of fail on that front.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything archaeology.
I think I would say these cavemen might be the worst cavemen that we've ever seen. Like, this is Neanderthal level. It's even worse than Neanderthal because these cavemen are walking on all fours for some reason. Like, constantly. They never stand upright.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely the laziest cavemen that they could have possibly done. None of the cavemen make any sense.
No.
Yeah. And they don't even have any kind of facial prosthetics or stuff like that. They're just people that are kind of walking on all fours, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Also, they have long, disheveled hair. Some of them have dreadlocks, but they're all clean-shaven, too. Like, if you can't cut your hair, how can you shave your beard, right?
Yeah, and what have they been eating? Because presumably, you know, they've been there for a reasonable amount of time if they're from 14,000 years ago.
Mm.
Well, okay, so the timey-wimey stuff is one of the most interesting things, because I think they did it really well, but this is also where the caveman stuff doesn't make any sense to me, because the cavemen are not characters, they're just, like, obstacles in this movie. They have no, like... agency or anything. They're just there to kill everybody, right? But they did the math on IMDb. I was going to do the math myself, but somebody already did it on IMDb. So the year cycle that you can see in the when they're looking outside the cave is about 4 seconds. So that means 1 year is about 4 seconds. A minute is about 15 years. An hour would be 900 years. And they say if they were there for 6 hours, it would be 5,400 years. So how far back are we thinking these cavemen are supposed to go? Because if they're going back, you know, to the Upper Paleolithic, that's only 24 hours that they would have been in the cave. Like pretty much everybody in this cave has stumbled in on the same day from their own perspective, right?
That does make sense.
But at the same time, there's cave paintings in this cave. It's a very short scene where they see these cave paintings toward the end. And like, did these cave people, who are just murderous obstacles in the movie, paint the wall in like the 24 hours before everybody else showed up, with like some of the things are like hand negative impressions from like blowing paint over your hand, which is a common thing we see. The rest don't really make any sense. There's some geometric shapes that they saw in the hippies journal in the van and in their professor's journal, which I'm not exactly sure how any of that connects, because how did you get in that deep and see it and then get out but still be within your own time? But also there is a painting of a UFO, I'm sure. I don't know what else it could be supposed to be. But how? There's no aliens in this movie. They're all future humans, right? And how could they have painted that before it happened? It doesn't make any sense. That's the part where the movie, a lot of it felt really well thought out, and that part is like, that doesn't make any sense. They've only been in here for a day. I think
because the spaceman that came down to go grab stuff from the Fountain of Youth, the way he did it and was acting was if they do this all the time. Like, he knew exactly what to do, where to go and get it. So my idea was that they'd been coming down quite often, but he
wasn't an alien, though. He was a future
so
evolved
when he comes
human.
down,
So it's not like they've been doing that for a long time, because it took him, some number of minutes to do it at a minimum. A minute is 15 years. So anybody who comes in here is not coming out in their own time, right? The professor, when he went in at first, came out again and found his truck, and it was entirely overgrown with vegetation. So like even he walked in for just a few seconds and then walked out, and it was already many years later, and then must have walked in again at some other time.
So then how did the futuristic, he's still a spaceman. They still live in space.
He's a spaceman, but he's not an alien. He's a human.
But how did he know, like, how did they know that that's there, that it works, all of this? Like, this would be something that's disappeared. Like, they don't even live on Earth anymore because it's Armageddon. They live in the spaceship. So how is it that they know to come down to this cave, to walk across this path, to collect the water from this thing in this way, and then come back out?
Mm-hmm.
And to drag the guy that's dead into the pond? And he was
Remote
so quick,
sensing.
like the cavemen would come at him and he would put the collars on them for them to go to sleep. Like, it just seemed like they had already had this all planned out and they knew what to do. So maybe it's less that time is going and more that maybe time isn't linear.
I don't think that the movie says that at all. I think it just says time keeps going. My assumption was that these were just like Star Trek future people, where they had the technology to scan the planet and they like identified it from space, and he went down to get it.
So do you think he had a red shirt on underneath that spacesuit? Then that's why he never got fixed, because he was a red shirt.
I've been rewatching Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it's like more and more jarring every time I watch it. Like, they don't wear spacesuits. Like, they just beam down to every single planet.
Yeah.
How? But anyway.
Recruits are really expendable in the Star Trek universe. But so, well, maybe that does explain a bit about the cave people then. They're not murderous brutes. They're just hangry. That's why they've been there for 24 hours without any food. And so that's why they're really pissed off and raging at these other people.
These other people that would look like aliens to them, right?
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about human evolution, because the first spaceman that we see is 8 feet tall, wearing a spacesuit, but when they take off his helmet, he's clearly a human, but he looks pretty pale. And so I was thinking about how humans would evolve if we lived in space, because I feel like this is another thing where they actually put thought into it.
Yeah.
There's no reason humans would evolve to be 8 feet tall, except that if we were living in a low gravity environment like space. So do you think that kind of environment would reduce selective pressure and allow humans to become taller, or would it make any sense to evolve that way?
I think that was what I thought they were kind of going for, because in the kind of hologram news bit, they talk about colonizing Mars, I think, don't they?
Yeah.
So my kind of assumption was that this guy was essentially a Martian. That he'd grown up in a low gravity environment on Mars, and just that's why he'd kind of elongated. Though that wouldn't explain why he wasn't absolutely crushed by Earth gravity when he kind of came back to the
But
fountain
why
of
would
youth.
you elongate? Like, I could see like the pressure coming off of your joints and stuff, so you would like have that, but that wouldn't go to 8 feet. And then the other idea is that there'd be some kind of advantage for humans to exceed, or that within our makeup is already the ability, the potential to be 8 feet. I don't think there's any reason to assume it.
We could talk a bit about sort of sexual selection. I think that there is some fairly good evidence that being tall gives you sort of some positive advantages during lifetime. Certainly in kind of Western society, it's kind of correlated with increased
sexual selection.
Yeah, increased earning potential and increased likelihood of having offspring and that kind of thing.
Okay, so assuming that equates to the culture that we take with us thousands of years onto Mars, there would still be the idea that there's no like upper limit for the potential of a human to get to, because you're still going to end up, no matter about the sexual selection, there's still going to be this payoff between the amount of nutrients and work it goes into having a body that large, right?
Yeah, but then I guess you also have to factor in low gravity and how that would affect kind of overall physiology. I think with low gravity,
you'd have like less dense bones, so they could be larger surface area.
Yeah, there might be some other advantages. Also maybe just, I mean, I don't know I don't know personally, but I'm sure there must be some kind of ontogenetic effects of gravity on growth in terms of, the kind of pull of gravity affects how different parts of your body grow. And so
I have
maybe if
no idea
that's,
how we'd test that. It would have to
yeah,
be.
apart from sending people to Mars and watching how they grow up.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I could see humans getting taller, but not that tall.
I thought it was quite neat how they had him essentially kind of choke on normal air, and this is something that they kind of was a callback to when the first climber, whose name I think was it Kara?
I think so.
So she went up and spotted this kind of Armageddon landscape with absolutely nothing and all the sandstorms and all the rest of it, and she was struggling to breathe with the kind of I guess the
Well, there was no trees, so
yeah, the assumption being that maybe there's pollution.
it'll be carbon dioxide, right? There'd be
Yeah,
less
or
oxygen
like some kind of Wall-E sort of scenario where humans have kind of messed things up so much that the atmospheric composition has changed so that it's not really great for air breathing mammals. And then it's interesting that then when the helmet comes off the future spaceman, he's struggling to breathe in normal air because he's adapted to the kind of future air where it's a different composition or it has more pollutants in it or whatever. I thought that was quite neat.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a film I saw like years and years ago, like as an early teen. I can't even remember the name of it. All I remember is that it had, I think, Chris Christopherson in it, and it had similar kind of time effects where people came from the future into the past. And they had a similar setup where in the future the air was so polluted that future people couldn't breathe normal modern day air, and so their kind of little workaround was that they had all the future people smoking cigarettes like constantly. that was how they kind of got all their kind of atmospheric nutrients that were missing just from like being chain smokers in the present day.
Huh. So what about the like far future people that rescue them in the end? We don't really get to see them except for their hands, which are these really creepy alien hands.
Really creepy. Like, what's going to pull you out from underneath the bed?
Are these supposed to be further evolved humans, or are these supposed to be some kind of aliens at this point?
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of AI, the Spielberg Kubrick film. And the same kind of question. So if anyone that's seen AI, at the end of that, like, we don't know how much time has passed, and you've got the little AI boy gets rescued by humanoid entities. And are they evolved humans? Are they advanced robots? Are they aliens? It's kind of left ambiguous there and here. So I don't really have an answer to that. Did they have 5 fingers on their hands, or was it 3?
I couldn't tell.
I thought it was 5, but those really long witch-like alien ones.
Yeah, really wrinkly.
I really hope that's not where human evolution is going. Ugh.
One of the things this movie does really well is not over-explaining things, which I think it could have been a lot worse if it tried to, explain every little thing. Like, we don't know why this time warp exists. We know that it exists to protect the fountain, they say, but we don't have any idea where it came from or how it works. And I think that really makes it a lot better, because I really hate it when they try to explain something with science, but they just get it so bad that it's not believable. It's just a lot easier to suspend my disbelief when they don't tell me what it is. It's like, because the kids wouldn't know, so how would the audience know either, right?
Yeah. I think that time is not linear, and that the spaceman who came down, those people are the ones that put up the barriers to protect the Fountain of Youth that they can now access.
Interesting.
That's what I think.
I don't think the movie's that good. I don't think that they planned it out that well. I think that the spacemen are just a flaw. I
liked that they didn't have like info dumps, which a lot of low budget films are really prone to. And like Josh says, it really takes you out of it when you have somebody seemingly explaining everything, and you're like, well, how the fuck did they know that?
Yeah.
But I liked how it kind of took us along. We didn't really know what was happening at each step. At the same time as the kind of protagonists in the film, we were kind of putting it together bit by bit, which made it.
And it was only an hour and a half long. It wasn't super long. It wasn't one of those 2.5 hour movies where
Yeah.
it was good. And it answered enough of the questions that it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. And it mostly kind of stuck to its internal logic, which was great, in that nothing obviously violated the premises that it set up. And yeah, apart from the cave people that were kind of totally expendable, blank slates, it ended up nobody died, which was nice. Like, everyone came back to life thanks to the Fountain of Youth.
Well, I guess like the cowboy and the Spanish conquistador and all that, they were still trapped there.
Yeah, but they're
the main guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all alive. They'll never see their families or friends or pets or homes or planet again, but they're alive.
Yeah, and they get to see the future, which is pretty cool. Getting to live in space. I mean, that's all right, I think.
I'd rather die.
Okay.
I'd rather die.
All right. Okay.
It just, to me, it just is horrible. I couldn't even imagine that they were so happy about it.
Does anybody know anything about like the mythology surrounding the Fountain of Youth? Because that's kind of at the center of this movie, but a little bit more of a MacGuffin than anything, except for the Deus Ex Machina at the end, where everybody who's died can come back to life.
I don't know much. I mean, it's just one of those things, I think, like El Dorado, and just an excuse for the conquistadors to kind of push further into the Americas and sort of slaughter everybody on the way, just to try and find something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's all I know. And then, like, that whole idea that humans are always looking for that, right? Even now, in the scientific way, we're trying to find ways of stopping aging. And
I seem to remember vaguely in some kind of forgotten corner of my mind that wasn't it an explorer called Cabeza de Vaca or something that discovered Florida? He was supposed to be looking for the Fountain of Youth.
Well, I was just reading up on this this morning before we started recording here, but it was Ponce de Leon, I think, is the guy who was the governor of Puerto Rico and the first European to explore Florida. And there's a mythology that says he was looking for it in Florida, but apparently there's nothing to corroborate that from his own writings, so that might be a myth that built up after he died.
Right. Yeah, I'm just doing some quick Google searching. Cabeza de Vaca is someone completely different. It's just obviously his name, which means head of a cow in Spanish. That must have just stuck in my mind for that reason. Somebody called Cowhead.
Totally unrelated to anything, but none of the actors in this movie are recognizable to me except for Professor Hopper, who was in something else. Did he look familiar to you?
Just as a generic kind of all-American hero kind of type.
He wasn't in very much of the movie, though.
No, he's got to look like he should be from like a Christian movie or something, but I looked it up, and he is actually Beef Supreme in Idiocracy. Did you guys see Idiocracy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love that movie.
You have to remind me who Beef Supreme is.
Beef Supreme is the executioner who drives in on the ass dozer that's too big to fit into the stadium, so then he gets out and chases him around with a flamethrower.
Okay.
Oh, such a good
So he's got
movie.
range, is what you're saying. He has range.
He's got some pretty good range.
Yeah.
I thought he was great. He doesn't have any lines in Idiocracy, but he's got great facial expressions. He's got great character as this sort of celebrity executioner.
Wow.
I wish there was archaeology in that movie.
There's human evolution.
I guess
we could do it.
There's a little bit, with the and how they unnazified Europe. They have the little kind of history of the world thing that they go to in Idiocracy, where you see their kind of version of the past, and it's got dinosaurs and spaceships and stuff.
Okay, sounds to me like it sounds like it fits just as well as this movie.
This movie does have cavemen, so
yeah. And the acting's pretty good, I think, considering they're not big name actors. Quite often with these low budget films, the acting's terrible, but in this it was fairly good. Even the kids were pretty good, and kid acting is notorious for being difficult to do well. Yeah,
there was nobody that was so bad it took you out of the sense.
Although Furby, the little kid, he was quite annoying and creepy.
He was super creepy. There's
really?
Yeah. A little sleaze.
You didn't find him creepy?
I thought he was one of the more fun characters. Like, he dies right away, but I mean, he's creepy in like a sexual predator sense if he wasn't a child, because he's always trying to hit on the older girl. But he's like always recording.
Now, like, you got to start teaching the kids that age.
I guess that's true. But he's recording everything so they can like play it back after he's dead. So he dies right away, but then they watch his whole, arc on his GoPro. And I thought he was pretty good as a sort of charismatic, slightly creepy little kid, acting all by himself in this van. He's like out there for like 3 days or something before he decides to go into the cave to find the keys to the professor's truck. And I thought his acting was pretty great for like a kid trying to pretend not to be scared while he's left alone in the wilderness.
Yeah, it's multiple levels. Like, pretending to pretend to be scared. That's quite tricky to pull off. Do you know if any of the producers or directors have gone on to do anything additional to this? Have they gone on to greater things? Because it did seem like they had a decent amount of potential.
I don't know anything about that.
No.
I didn't recognize anybody else except for Beef Supreme in this movie.
Oh, so the Beef Supreme / Hopper, is he Andrew Wilson? Is he one of the Wilson brothers?
Oh, that's the other thing, because I wrote that he's Budget Owen Wilson, but is he actually related to
I think he
Owen
might be
Wilson?
his brother. Let me just check.
Really?
He sounds just like him.
That would make sense of why he was in Idiocracy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with Luke Wilson.
Let's see. He is Luke Wilson's brother, so therefore he must also be Owen Wilson's brother. There you go.
Oh, that makes sense, because at some point in the movie, he's like, oh, wow. And I'm like, wow, that sounds exactly like Owen Wilson.
There you go. I've just been sort of browsing IMDb to get some more information on that. And in the trivia, it says that apparently the caves are where the Batcave in the 1966 Batman is. So that's pretty cool. I knew I'd seen somebody else before. So the older of the female TA, she was probably the best actor in this, I thought. The one that Furby's always hitting on. Yeah?
Kara or Jackie?
Jackie.
Okay.
She's the TA, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. So she's in Ginny and Georgia, which I think is doing pretty well on whatever platform it's on. Is it Netflix? Yeah, it must be Netflix. She plays the mother in Ginny and Georgia.
I have not seen that one.
I watched some of it with Alice. And yeah, that must be what I recognised her from. There you go. But yeah, she's a pretty good actress. I'm glad that she's doing well.
I'm now looking, like I've gone down all these photos of this Andrew Wilson guy, and he's actually the way better looking brother.
Way better what?
Looking.
Than
Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson?
Well, I think my wife would disagree. Owen Wilson's her favourite.
I mean, Owen Wilson they're all great.
You can't backtrack now,
Andrew
Kim. You've made your choice.
No. I do. I stick by it. Andrew Wilson is the more like traditionally good-looking, rugged man. The other ones are kind of goofy, cute. Anything else to talk about with this film?
Despite the fact that it's so crazy and there's so much packed into this movie, I don't have a lot to say about it. Like, we talked about the cavemen. That's really the main thing. It's pretty...
There's not much archaeology.
Despite the fact that it does have an archaeologist and archaeology students and cavemen, there really isn't a lot of archaeology.
There's no talk about archaeology or anything like that, or even mention of anything archaeological.
It is quite realistic to have... is it quite realistic to have an archaeology professor that hangs around with his TAs outside of class? I don't know if that is particularly realistic.
Well, he said he was going on an expedition, and so, like, my professor went, like, she's, like, inviting me to go on digs with her, so in that sense, they don't really know what he's doing. They think that he's going on a dig, so they kind of want to be going on the dig with him, right?
Yeah.
Although
they know that he was looking for the van, because he says he found the van.
Yeah, so that's the weird part. Why students would think that an archaeologist is looking for hippies as part of, like, his archaeology
that
work.
disappeared in the 70s. I mean, that's definitely forensics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, they could have made them anybody. It didn't have to be an archaeologist and his grad students because it has nothing really to do with the storyline.
Yeah.
Right? They just needed someone who was a caver. That's it.
Yeah.
When he was lying in the cave dying of a stab wound underneath those cave paintings, I feel like a real archaeologist would be like, oh, I gotta document this before I die.
Yes. The like last of the battery on the phone, you'd be taking pictures.
Yeah.
I have a story from the field where some professor fell into the trench that we were digging. And so you can just hear from the back of the cave this scream and then like, oh no, I wrecked the profile.
Oh no.
Yeah, that sort of says a lot about priorities. I read the profile. Oh, and also I've broken all my bones, but the profile.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're just ending up with a pretty short episode here, depending on how much I have to cut out from our over-talking because of all the lag on this call.
My puppy going insane in the middle of it, doing zoomies in the bedroom.
Yeah, I got a lot of editing work, I guess.
I was half expecting Naomi to start drumming. She's just got she's graduated from a drum pad to an actual wearable drum for the pipe band, which is very noisy.
Cool.
Yeah, but thankfully she hasn't started
So
that.
she comes in the background just banging on the drum.
Well, you'd be able to hear it if she's doing it in the house. You'd be able to hear it up here. But thankfully she's been warned off.
All right, so what do we think about this movie in the end?
I think overall good.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. It was fine.
It had a lot of. It was definitely reaching for a lot of stuff, and it mostly carried it off. For a kind of low budget sci-fi, it did pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
It's not low budget in the sense of some of the last ones, like the
Trog,
the Man from Earth, Trog. It looks good. It looks like a real movie. IMDb said the budget was estimated to be like $1 million, I think, which is like low for a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, not like The Man from Earth, which I think its budget was like $25,000 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or 100,000 maybe. I can't remember, but much less. So it's not like a student film; it's a real movie with just a low budget for a major movie.
Yeah, and they've done a lot. I mean, it doesn't look cheap for the most part, and
no, it was more entertaining than 2012.
Yeah, or probably than 10,000 BC as well. I guess.
Yeah,
those are our baselines, aren't they? Those are what tier did they end up in? F tier.
F, yeah. F for fuck, I don't want to watch that again.
Yeah.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.